Hey everybody, JR from JR's Cars. And if you've been seeing any of the previews that I've been posting lately, we have this 1994 Jeep Renegade to start working on. So what I'm going to end up doing today is the valve cover gasket, and this thing is really juicy. So let's get this done. So like I said before, we have this 1994 Jeep Wrangler Renegade, and it's going to make a couple appearances on the channel here because I have a bunch of things to do. It ended up blowing a brake line here, and the other lines are looking kind of crispy, so I'm just going to end up replacing all the brake lines to make it good and reliable. It also needs a valve cover gasket because if you take a look at the top here, you can see that this looks like it's been leaking for a while. And if you take a look, you can see all this in here, all on the right side. This is the intake over here. It's all oily going straight to the back. So before I go and pull this valve cover off to replace the gasket, I want to give this a good clean just so I'm not getting all this gunked up mess in the engine. And that way it'll make it a little bit easier to clean this valve cover once it's off too. First step, get the gunk and start cleaning it up. Okay, we're going to let this sit a little bit, and then I'm going to agitate it, and then we'll rinse this off and see how good it cleaned up. All right, so what I like to do here is I'll just grab whatever toothbrush I have laying around that's junk, a little bottle that I could put some water and a little bit of soap in it. We'll start getting it wet, and then we'll just start agitating a little bit. Try and get some of this junk out of here. And something to look at too is you want to make sure that when you're going around these injectors, you want to make sure that you're not hitting these wires, that you're pretty much steering clear of them. You're not agitating around them to cause any kind of electrical issues. Now that we're getting kind of sloppy here, I think it's time for some gloves. Okay, so I did a little bit of scrubbing here. What I'm going to do now is just hose it off with some plain water to see how clean it got. We may have to do this a couple times, so we'll see what it looks like now after doing this first cleaning. You don't want to do this with a pressure washer because there's a lot of electronics over here and you don't want to break anything. So just a regular garden hose will do you good. First glance here, the first rinse actually did pretty well. Wasn't too bad. Cleaned up a pretty good amount of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one more time, and then I think I'll be good enough to let this just dry up a little bit. And then I'll take that valve cover off and then we'll get that job done. Alrighty, so I got pass 2 done and it's looking really good now. I'm happy with the results, so that way I can pull this valve cover off without having all that gunk drop into the engine. Now, one thing I did see here, and I'll bring you around to the side here, is as I was messing around with some things here, this bolt was completely loose. So my bet is that there's a few of these that are already loose and it's just been leaking and leaking and leaking. So we'll get all these bolts off, we'll get this taken care of. First thing, obviously, you want to do is you want to take this off here so you can get this harness out of the way. You want to take this one off so you can get these lines out of the way. You want to pull this here, this bracket, out of the way for your heater lines. All right, these are your heater lines here. We'll move those out of the way. Here's another one for the wire harness. This one's good up here. And then over here, we need to pull this up. You want to do it very gently because this is the wire harness going down this side of the engine. There's 3 mounts here and one in the back there. That'll lift up out of the way. And then what we can do is we can get to the bolts. The nice thing about the Jeeps is that they actually take standard bolts. It's amazing. I haven't seen a car that takes standard bolts in a long time now. So these are 7/16. There's probably about, I think, either 10 or 15, probably about 15 of them around the whole valve cover. And what you want to make sure is that you're not taking those out. So at this point, what we'll do is we'll take these off, we'll take that off. I'll start unplugging these over here, moving these brackets out of the way so we can get the wire harnesses out of the way, get this out of the way, and then we'll take those bolts off and get this valve cover off. If you're working around anything electronics, remove your negative from your battery so that you don't have current running through any of these wires. And you really want to make sure that you're careful with the wires because this truck, it's almost 30 years old at this point. So things are going to start getting brittle. You don't want to break anything. And of course, if you don't have one of these little magnetic cups that you can put all the nuts in, I highly suggest getting one. They're only a couple bucks. I've seen them at Harbor Freight because, like I always say, there's nothing worse than losing your nuts. That's going to get replaced anyway because it was broken, so no harm, no foul. Loose. 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 And the big old bumper in the front is really good for a knee stand. Loose. Okay, so out of 15 bolts that were holding this in, there was probably 3 that were actually tight. Everything else was loose. So no wonder why this thing was leaking. It's pretty crazy. But let's pop this guy off now. And it's not even going to fight me because it's been leaking. All right, so it looks like I may have to remove the map sensor here just to get a little bit of extra room. So let me move that right now. And I think we should be fine because I'm getting hung up here on the upper radiator hose. And I'm getting hung up back here where the map sensor comes out. So just getting rid of that little bit. Pulling those 2 little, I think they're like 6mm bolts probably. Getting those out of there should give it enough to get it up and out. Alrighty. It's off. And wow, is that seal just wasted. Alright, if you take a look here, you can see that's the gasket that was on there. Look at how thin it is. It's just, you know, junk. It's probably been on there. If it's not the original, this was probably one that was replaced a long time ago, because gaskets have come a very long way since then. And the one that we're putting on here is a Felpro Permadry that has the metal core. So this thing is never going to leak again. And this is junk. And now you can see the inside of the valve cover here. It really doesn't look too bad. I believe this truck has like either 164 or 167,000 on it. But you can definitely tell that it's been leaking for a while. I mean, this is all just, you can see this is gummed up. This is baked in oil, especially around the front here. This is the front. This is the rear of the engine. So it's a little bit cleaner towards the back than it is the front, but it really doesn't look too bad. And then we can take a look here. Look at the inside of the engine. Look at the valves. Definitely needs an oil change too. That oil's looking pretty gummy, but you can see in here there's a little bit of sludge. Not really too bad though. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean up this mating surface on the head. I'll do the same thing to the mating surface on the valve cover itself. So what I do is I have these plastic razor blades. They're really just like plastic, chunks of plastic that are in the shape of a razor. This is the plastic razor blades that I use. They're just cheap little Amazon things. You can get them. I think this whole kit was like $6, something like that. That'll clean this up without scoring it. And then you'll get some emery cloth and then just go over it really lightly. So that way you get a good, nice, clean mating surface on both sides. And then we'll get that valve cover back on. And we'll tighten everything back up. Okay, so here we go. We got the head cleaned up, about as good as it's going to get. I got the valve cover cleaned up, about as good as it's going to get too. I'm going to lay the gasket in there, and then I'm going to shimmy the valve cover back in, and we'll get this all buttoned back up and put back together. All right, I have the gasket in place. Now let's see if I can get this in without cursing too much. All right, so the cover's back on. I'm gonna line up the bolts to make sure that everything goes through straight again. I'm gonna torque it down to 144 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. And then we'll get the rest of it together. I'm waiting for a breather hose, the one that broke before. We can at least call this part of it done after I get all those bolts back in. And don't forget that one in the back there. All right, so now that we have this all set up and ready to go, I'm going to torque them down, but I'm going to do it in 2 passes. I'm going to do the first pass at 85 inch-pounds, and then I'm going to do the second pass at 144 inch-pounds. And there it is. All the bolts are on. They're torqued down. We're good to go. Now we can put all the other stuff back together. This hose back here is the one that I'm waiting on the piece. So what I think I'm going to do is just wrap the other one up in electrical tape right now, just so I can start it and see how the car runs while I'm waiting for the part. It should be here tomorrow, so it's not a big deal. So I'll put that in. I'll put my map sensor back in there, anchor it here, we'll plug it back in, and then we'll start her up and we'll see how she sounds, and just double check and make sure we're not seeing any leaks anywhere. Alright, so it's all buttoned back up, everything's torqued down. I put everything back together with exception of that back vacuum hose, which I'm waiting for tomorrow. I just kind of cobbled it together with some electrical tape right now, but we'll give it a start and we'll see if she has any leaks. So that smoke that you're seeing there is just burning off the engine clean that I put on there before. That's normal. So take a look. We'll see if I see anything new. But from what I can see, everything looks okay at this point. Smoke's starting to burn off a little bit. I don't see any new oil leaks on that side. No new oil leaks on this side either. So I'm going to call that a success. And this part of the job is done. So if you like this video, you like this truck, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop your comments below, because I'm going to be doing the brake lines next on this. And then once that's all done, we'll have a review video and a ride along. So I hope everybody's staying safe, and I'll catch you in the next video where we do the brake lines on this Jeep.